I guess I'm the FaceTime guy.
Just a FaceTime guy.
Just
living in a Zoom world. I don't know.
That's definitely how we should start the podcast.
It's definitely how this episode is going to start. Hey, everybody.
Awesome.
Welcome to the show it's the one about Godzilla movies. Someday I'm going to get our own title right.
Sure is. Working title.
Yeah. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah. It's been a few days since I watched the movie we're going to talk about today. But still have it fairly fresh in the mind, and wrote myself a little review
Cool.
action.
Cool.
So
Great.
I could get those live thoughts down, you know?
Get those lights cranking in. If you're, as long as we're here talking about likes, make sure you like the video, like the channel, subscribe, all that good stuff.
And as stated last time, no one's asking you to smash anything, but maybe caress it gently. You know, smash.
Which, honestly, though, is a little antithetical to the show that we're doing, because it's about...
That's true.
It's about wild amounts of destruction.
Listen, destruction is cool in art, but just not in the real world, you know? Got to keep that separate.
Yeah, got to keep them separated. Title.
Sick.
Well, hey, we are back to talk about another Godzilla movie, and we've decided to go in era order of their reboots. So basically, Toho, started in 1954, and they did a run of movies till 1975, and they were all with the same director, or largely with the same director, and they named that era after who the current emperor of Japan was, and that was Showa. So that ran to 1954 and 1975. And then they rebooted the series, just kind of like, hey, we're starting over, just like Batman has had done a million times, just like Superman and Spider-Man, whatever. We've had these origin stories. So they did that in 1984. And quick little bit of follow-up on the last show. I pronounced this era incorrectly.
Shoot.
It is the I said Heisei era or Heisei, but it's actually Heisei.
Okay.
So I apologize. So the Heisei era was 1984 to 1995, and that's the movie that we're going to be watching or that we watched already. We're going to be discussing on this episode. It's called The Return of Godzilla. And then they did a weird thing, just like with the 1954 movie, where they like cut it up again, added in new stuff with the same American director, same American actor, who like reprised his role, and they called it just Godzilla 1985, and they released it in America. And you didn't get a chance to watch it, I don't think.
I have not watched it. No, I did actually. I was able to track it down like not an hour before we're recording this actually, but as of now, no plans to watch it.
Yeah,
I did.
I mean, it is largely the same film. I kind of feel like it's not really worth watching, or at least not like to include in something critical like this. It's not even talked about in a lot of like the like when people talk about the eras or just like the list of films of Godzilla films, the 1956 like Godzilla King of the Monsters American release and 85 are really not talked about at all, like as if they're not canon. So yeah.
It's true. Yeah, and the Godzilla 1985 also seems to be almost like not blacklisted, but it's very hard to find. Yeah, and it
probably because nobody bought it on VHS seems, and then it never made it to DVD kind of thing.
It was actually released on Laserdisc, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, but not very good quality, and I think it was like cropped down from the original frame from what I was seeing. It was kind of cropped in on the sides to to fit your TV, they would do.
The following film has been modified from its original format to fit this screen.
Yep, but lots of great quality for the original 84 film, Return of Godzilla, and seemingly a good amount of releases of that in HD.
Sweet. Yeah. Before we jump in, for sure. Before we jump in, I wanted to, like, I feel like I didn't do a very good job of explaining the eras last time in the way that we're jumping around. So, so there was,
Okay.
there was like the Showa era, there was the Heisei era, and that was reboot number 1, where basically Toho said that every film except for the original 1954 is no longer canon. It doesn't really, I mean, they exist, but like none of that factors into the movie Godzilla 1984. 1984 is a direct follow-up, or a direct, like, in timeline directly after, or supposed to take place directly after 1954. Obviously many years in the future and stuff, but there is, nothing has happened since the end of the 1954 movie, essentially.
Sure.
So they made movies from 84 to 95 in this Heisei era, and then kind of took a break. In 1999, they started a new era called the Millennium era. This era is easily the trickiest, and it's also, I wouldn't say it is the worst, but it's definitely, like, if I had to rank them between, like, Showa, Heisei, and Millennium, the original, like, eras, I would say Heisei has the best set of films, then Millennium, then Showa. The Millennium films are just kind of cringy in their own ways. Part of it is just because of where pop culture and media was in the early 2000s, especially in Japan. We're going to talk about all this when we get to these films, but, like,
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
The Millennium era jumps around in that, like, each film basically is not a continuation of the one before it. It is a continuation of 1954 again. So, like, they made Godzilla 2000 in 1999. That's a direct sequel to 54. And then the next movie, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, All Out Monsters Attack. That one is, again, a direct sequel to 1954, as if Godzilla 2000 had never happened. And then they do another movie, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. And that's another direct sequel to 54. It's not a follow-up to, like, so it's basically like every film in the Millennium series is just a follow-up to 1954, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Except for there's a couple that,
to,
like,
what about Mega Guirus, or however you say it?
Mega Gearus. That is also
Same thing.
one that is supposed to be a direct sequel to 1954. It is not its own, like,
Gotcha.
it's not a follow-up to anything but the original film.
The more you know.
Yeah. And then there's a couple there where they, like, it's like two films are part of the same timeline or storyline, and they also tie in 1961 Mothra, like the standalone Mothra film, and blend some stuff in there into one story, which is kind of cool. But, like, I think those two films are about the standout of the Millennium era. And even those are still pretty cringy, and it's like they're trying to do anime in real life, and they didn't quite nail it. So that's the Millennium era. That was until 2004. And then at that point, well, in between the Heisei and the Millennium era was when not Legendary, TriStar Pictures, Sony, bought the rights to Godzilla from Toho and made that movie with Matthew Broderick called Godzilla, which we are going to watch and talk about, I think, as well.
Maybe that'll be the next one.
Yeah, that would technically be the next one.
Chronologically, it's the next one that came out that is
correct.
Sort of a reboot, if you will.
Correct. So we'll do that one next. That Godzilla shows up in 2004's Godzilla Final Wars, and it is just named Zilla at that point. Like, Toho bought the rights back from Sony. Yeah. And those are the only two films it ever appears in. So that's the TriStar Zilla. That was, 1998 and then 2004.
Wait, I have a question real quick.
Uh-huh.
So you say TriStar bought the rights, but there are, 5 movies before Final Wars that were Toho films? Do they, like, both have the rights? Or...
It wasn't like they permanently bought the rights from Toho. They bought it to produce... Originally, they were going to produce a trilogy of films of this style of Godzilla, and so it was basically like, hey, we're buying the rights to Godzilla for 3 films, and you, Toho, can still do whatever you want, but we are going to do Sony. We're going to do this one. kind of like what's going on with Legendary Pictures right now, where they've got their own Godzilla thing going, and then Toho just rebooted again with Godzilla -1. But there's also been, at the same time as all this Legendary stuff, Toho's been doing a lot of animated stuff. There's a bunch of stuff on Netflix. There's some, I think, Amazon Prime stuff. Just really cool stories that are all different anime styles and different crazy stories, and those are really cool. So so kind of similar idea, where in like the late 90s, before the Millennium era, they TriStar or Sony was going to try and make 3 films, and this one did so terribly that they just never made 2 more.
Gotcha.
So there's the TriStar, and then there is so there's the Millennium era. Then there was that TriStar Godzilla Millennium, and there was a little bit of a break. And in that time is when Toho started they decided they wanted to branch out of making the films themselves and just work with other film companies, filmmakers, that kind of stuff, and just see what would happen with Godzilla around the world. And that is where the first Godzilla movie that you saw, 2014's Godzilla, made by Legendary Pictures, in collaboration with Toho. And it's been and the idea was to create a Marvel Cinematic Universe style thing. And they decided to do it with an American film company because of how successful the American version, of Marvel Comics had really had been. So
it's officially called the Monsterverse, I believe.
Correct. Yep, the Monsterverse. So that started that first film came out in 2014, is still going. And then in 2016, with the beginning of with Shin Godzilla, the emperor in Japan is Reiwa. And so that is the name of the current era, the Reiwa era, 2016 to now. That includes, I just draw my fidget toys. That's fun. That includes Shin Godzilla, Godzilla -1, and then the litany of animated stuff. There are a couple of short films that Toho have done that are only on YouTube, and just a whole bunch of stuff, which is kind of cool. So that's kind of the era.
And how does the
breakdown,
the series fit into that?
All of these little, so the Reiwa era it's shaping up to be a little bit like the Millennium era, but not as terrible. In that, the storytelling is really great, but it's kind of it's a multiverse kind of feel, where there are multiple timelines, multiple different Godzilla, multiple different iterations of him, and so they all are just kind of, some of them are origin stories, some of them are picking up, there's one on Netflix where Godzilla is literally big enough to eat the planet, and it's 1,000 years in the future, and everybody has to flee Earth.
What's that called?
I will find out.
Huh. That's cool.
I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. It's a three-part series. I think each part is an hour and a half long or something. All animated, and it's just it's kind of slow. It's very Japanese, but I enjoyed it for what it was. There is another show called Godzilla Singular Point that I have watched through twice, and it's episodic, animated anime style, and it follows it's a brand new storyline, but it uses a character who's one of my favorite characters, Jet Jaguar, and it's a really cool, I don't know, I have really appreciated the way that they're really kind of involving science in ways that seem a little more real than they ever have in their films. A lot of especially as we get into this 80s stuff and Mechagodzilla, or the crazy ways that they come up to defeat Godzilla, it's we built this thing, and there was no deliberation over the science of it, or what are we gonna do, which they kind of have started to figure out in newer stuff. So that's called Godzilla Singular Point. Yeah, I enjoyed that show a lot.
Monarch is actually the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, so then Monarch is within the Monsterverse, And that takes place, I forget, it takes place directly after the first Godzilla film that you saw, the 2014 Godzilla.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's somewhere, it's either after that film or the film after it, King of the Monsters.
Cool.
And it's 10 episodes. Sam and I have watched 8 of them. We need to finish the last 2. But it's an incredible show.
The reason I'm interested in it, for those who don't know, Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell, who's also an actor, are playing young and old versions. Old's maybe a little rude, but older and younger versions of the same character as a father-son actor duo. Kind of cool. They're both great actors, so I'm sure that is great.
It is. It is actually really good. I was a little like, at the beginning, just like seeing their names. But they did a really good job of it. And they do a really good job of back and forth between the timelines, where sometimes it's confusing and other times it's like, oh, here we are. But they're intentional about it. Like, they intentionally confuse you which timeline you're on for a moment, kind of thing.
Nice.
Because it's back and forth from the past to the present, and it's really, really good. I highly enjoy Monarch. Even if you don't like Godzilla movies and just would like, the human story is really good. The acting is really great. Like, it's just like Apple has been doing with a majority of their shows. They, in my opinion, knocked it out of the park. So
I may watch that after we rewatch the 2014 film, since you've seen that recently, and then we can touch on it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah, so all of that kind of fits within the, other than Monarch, but all the other TV shows and animes, and there's a couple like YouTube shorts that I mentioned. I'll find links for all this stuff that all kind of fit in the Reiwa era. And some people are calling the like Netflix films, all the animated stuff, the brutal era, because that is a lot of the stories on that side of things are a very brutal Godzilla, and a very beyond angry kind of storyline kind of thing, and dealing with lots of really hard emotions of losing family and that kind of stuff. So they're really good, but they're not easy. So yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Woo!
All right. So should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Godzilla, 1984, The Return of Godzilla.
Sir.
Yeah, directed by Ishiro Honda. And no, this isn't Honda. Anyways, let's go for it, please. It's your show.
Yeah. Directed by Hashimoto, Masuda, and Matsubayashi.
Yeah.
3 directors, it seems. So.
Hashimoto. Cool.
Yeah. So, and you rewatched this the other night, yes?
I did, yep. I actually watched it like 1.5 times through. I like...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just kind of went like back halfway where it like... Because you're going to learn real quick with every Godzilla movie, there is a point where the action picks up. They've got their battle plan, and here we go. It's Act 3. This is it.
Of course. So I start.
Yeah.
I can get into my thoughts. Man, like, I started the film and immediately had to turn it down because the music and whatever else was going on in the sound design layer, like in the first minute or so, with like some of those, with the titles that are rolling, it was just freaking blasting my subwoofer. My entire room was shaking, and I was like, "Oh man,
I love that.
I'm ready." Yeah. Overall, like the film, I don't think it's as strong as the original.
Okay.
For a couple reasons, but there are a lot of things I liked about it. Some things I liked. Thought it was cool that they sort of in universe and in like a number of years timeline reference the 1954 film, or reference the events of it. You know, there's some characters who reference either like being around then, or someone they know was like lost during that rampage. There's some moments where they like show some clips from it. So that's pretty cool. That grounds it as a sequel rather than like a remake.
Sure.
Which, like, it's called The Return of Godzilla, right? It's not like a complete reboot. It's like just saying that he came back, and they came up with a way to justify that with some volcanic activity, of course. But that's cool. I also really liked just like the story writing idea of the time period of the 80s and referencing the Cold War directly, like involving that in the story, given their positioning kind of between the U.S. and the USSR at the time, like geolocation wise.
Yeah.
Having that thing with, I mean, spoilers, right? But you're listening to this, but having the thing with submarine and like warnings of nukes and like a thing that gets set off, and again, like similar to the first film, really grounds it in like the exact like time that it occurs.
Right.
So
yeah, and like what the actual like subject matter of the film is.
Yeah,
right?
it's
like,
a good
not
like,
just yeah.
It's a good writing device for adding some drama and some tension that's like parallel to the Godzilla factor.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
On that note, it's interesting to me how they go back and forth in films between this like Japan needs to man up and be its own country now kind of thing. Japan needs to grow up, and then like the United States holding their hand and, oh, you're just this little country, and, oh, we're going to help. Like they bounce back and forth throughout the whole like series on films of how like what the government like interaction is going to be, and if they're that whole scene with the diplomats, the Russian dude and the American dude, and just like the Russian just like the Soviet guy just like yelling at him like we will use nuclear weapons against them, just like I don't know why I'm doing a German accent because I'm not good at Russian. Mr. Prime Minister, and the dude from America, of course, has like a Texas accent, freaking perfect. Like,
yep.
The president has authorized the use of
cheeseburger bang bang.
Cheeseburger bang bang America, baby. Woo! Yeah, I have my bell if you didn't notice.
I like the I like the Cold War thing. I don't know if they were intending to go for it, but there just wasn't as much of a somber tone to the film, it seemed. It didn't feel as serious as like the original, which is fine.
Sure.
But
do you think that has anything to do with just the fact that it was the 80s? Because like Die Hard doesn't really have a serious feel either, and I would kind of put this in a similar realm of like action movie with a point, kind of.
Yeah.
Not saying that they're the same from a movie to movie like storytelling standpoint, but in the like within the same genre and definitely within the same like, the 80s kind of thing. Do you think it has anything to do with that? Like the less somber, just because the 80s were so like.
Yeah, it might be. It might just be more like the difference between World War II versus Cold War, especially with like Japan's context, just post bombing, if you will. There's obviously some somberness from the reality of that. I don't know. I think of like the Cold War as like all the spy stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like just thinking about World War II, I wasn't around then, obviously, but like there's more of like a somberness to everything that happened as a part of that, whereas like thankfully Cold War never like really amounted to anything major.
Yeah,
there was so much tension felt, I'm sure, but it's not.
I wonder
like
if some of it too is also just like
some,
where Japan was in the 80s.
Yeah,
versus
I think
where
it'd
they
be
were
different if like the Cold War like resulted in like some kind of a crazy nuke thing, and
Yeah.
then the events of this film were just after that. I think there would probably be a much more somber tone. But yeah, they just use it as a tension building device, which I respect.
Yeah. The whole like Soviet control ship in Tokyo Harbor that's like disguised as a freighter, and they like accidentally launch the nuke. Like,
yeah, they kept showing. It's funny. They kept going close-ups of that guy like on the ground, and I kept expecting like the shot where he's like reaching for it, but they just like never went for that.
Yeah,
like he didn't even try. He just laid there. And he just went off.
Just
I thought they were
dead.
gonna add more tension by having him like try and reach it or something.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have lots more to say, but
well, please.
Yeah, they blended scale elements really well. I think it's like much more seamless in this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Getting the what do you want to call it, suitmation blended in there. There's like a lot of shots where there's just all like it's kind of like this fogginess surrounding him.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks really cool. Like there's so many frames where I'm like, ooh, that'd be a cool still frame, you know. Just like all the fogginess and the moodiness, especially like that power plant, like kind of like the first entrance. Like it's kind of foggy and it's night and there's lights and
yeah, that scene.
It's pretty cool.
When I watched it the other day, that was because this was I believe this is the first movie I ever saw.
Oh.
When I was probably like 7 or something.
Okay.
And like, or this is the first one that I saw like start to finish. I think like one of the 70s ones or whatever had been on TV and like caught like the end of it kind of thing. So knew who Godzilla was. But this was one that like my dad. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry. This was one that we'd rented it from, not Blockbuster because we didn't have a Blockbuster in Woodstock, but like, you know, whatever the movie store was, and took home. But like that entrance, then that whole like that exact like the foggy nighttime, like just I remember that, you know, being slightly terrifying as a 7-year-old or however the heck old I was. Like, so cool, so cool. Those movies, yeah. It's amazing how much I didn't notice any of the, like, it was, like, I think my dad had to point it out to me years later of the fact that, like, well, those are all just, like, miniatures. Those are all just, like, toy tanks. And those are, like, it was just so engrossing and so, yeah, just looked so cool that it never even crossed my mind that was a dude in a suit. Like.
Yeah, it looked good. The design seemed pretty similar to the original. The difference... The real long moving tail, like that was kind of a new element, it seemed. I assume there's some kind of like animatronics in there or something that they're operating off screen, but it's a long tail.
Yeah.
It was like swinging around and stuff and kind of smashing, and that was a cool idea.
I am excited to get to Shin Godzilla. His tail is like, you know how cats kind of always have their tail up in the air and the tip is just kind of always doing this? Shin Godzilla's tail is basically like a cat tail, but it's almost like it's longer than his body. So it's just like up behind him, way back here, just like doing its own thing all the time. It's like, and it's creepy, dude. Like, oh, I love that film. I cannot wait. Shin Godzilla, it's creepy. It's not a horror. It's not a like thriller. It's just creepy. It's a wonderful film. I'm so excited. Anyways, continue.
Nice. I really like. Can't help yourself. That bell. Yeah, I like the music. There's some nice melodic work. We can get to the trivia later. I thought I remembered reading that it was like composed like really quickly, so I was kind of impressed by that. There were some of like the stereotypical 80s action synths.
Yeah.
Didn't love that as much, but the compositional work with the strings was really nice. Yeah, felt a step above the original. It's a little more modern. You just watched this, so I'm sure you remember it. I also referenced on my list of things that I liked the guy in the fire suit who just ran into the frame on fire and then back out again. There's just this shot of the movie. It just stood out to me. In the midst of destruction, there's a guy on fire, right? But it's clearly like a guy like in a fire suit, like they would.
Yeah.
You know, he's got like, you know, gel or something on the suit, and he's been lit on fire, right? But he just kind of like runs into the side of the frame and waves his arms around, and then runs back out again. It's not like the camera pans over to him, or he's like in the background of a shot. He literally like runs into the frame and out again. And I literally rewound it on the spot. So funny to me. Maybe we can dig up a clip for the show.
I literally just Googled Return of Godzilla, guy on fire runs in and out of scene.
You found it?
The first result is the Return of Godzilla highway explosion scene. It's a 25-second clip.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if this is it, but if it
Please click it.
Clicking.
I need to know.
Watching. No, it's not it. Dang it. That would have been so cool. That looked like do you remember in Back to the Future where Doc builds the miniature of Hill Valley, and he like shows Marty how the time machine is going to catch the wire to generate the electricity, and it like catches the whole model on fire? That's what that scene looked like. There's like a highway explosion scene where he blows a helicopter out of the air, and it lands on a bridge, and because it's all just cars and traffic it's just like just traffic jam of empty cars, they all just like explode in a line. It just goes and it's like they just followed the miniature right down the street.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
I will
I will put that in show notes if you want to watch that little 24-second clip.
Absolutely. We'll also put a link to the guy on fire if we can find it. Just like a little clip.
Yeah, for sure.
We can make that happen. I'll have to dig that up. That was hilarious. So that's my general bullet points of things I liked.
Title. What? Okay. Before we talk about what you didn't like, I think I'll talk about what I liked.
Do it.
For me, I've started to latch on to how do they think they're going to defeat Godzilla in this film? What is the harebrained scheme to get rich from, to quote Kanye West? Like, what do the humans, what is this crazy last ditch effort thing that they come up with to defeat him?
By the way, this is what, 5 or 6, 7 time watching for you? Don't know.
Yeah, probably 6, probably.
Yeah.
6 or 7. It is the way that they go about trying to, so like in 1954 they use an oxygen destroyer, right? Where they basically just like remove all the oxygen from the water, and apparently that just like kills everything around it. In this one, dang it, why did it just leave my head? Oh, the scientists notice that he like starts following birds, right? Like they're flying somewhere, and he like follows them, and so he's like, oh, like they come up with this idea that he must like respond to radio waves and like magnetic poles like birds do.
Yeah.
So they hatched this plan to use these radio waves to force Godzilla to a volcano. And they're going to trick him into walking into a volcano.
I know.
That's your brilliant idea. We're going to use radio waves to get him to walk into a volcano.
It's the best they could come up with, apparently. And by that, I mean the scientists, not the writers of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It is a hilarious plot point, and I don't know. I think it's very 80s. It is very like loosey goosey science, just enough that like it's like it is, in my opinion, one of the first times, because you haven't watched any of the 70s films yet, but like it's one of the first times, in my opinion, that they do something plausible with science. They don't really explain how they do it, but it is a like, oh yeah, I guess I could see that, as opposed to just like, we made this giant laser beam, blah, like, you know, what does that even mean? What? The aliens, blah. There's so much alien BS in the 70s stuff. Like,
yeah, there is so much 80s written all over this film. It is like blatantly obvious that it is from the 80s.
Yeah,
and I can't even necessarily describe how, but it's like instinctive. The music, some of those music notes are dead giveaways.
Yeah. My ultimate, just like, what in the heck moment of the whole movie was when they are trapped in the building. It's like the doctor and his daughter, or whoever the girl is, and the guy, and they're trying to get out of this building and they can't, and so then the other dude shows up and they're in a helicopter and they like break the window out.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that would never work. Like, you'd be able to break, but like the amount of time that poor helicopter pilot had to sit there with all of the, and like Godzilla's what? Mm-hmm. The next building over. There's no way.
I'm trying to hold it steady.
And it's like, it's not even moving. The helicopter's not even moving. Of course, I'm trying to hold it. And they just like, they get the doctor in the brace thing, and he just gets like yanked out the window. And it's like, I feel like they didn't mean for him to get yanked out the window that hard, but they just like, we're gonna go with it, because he was just like like nobody was ready for how fast he got yanked out that window. Oh man, this is so great. Distracted by a Flock of Birds. Boy, if that isn't my favorite Cure album. Title.
Oh my god.
So what didn't you like about this movie?
So I guess some of these are just like opinions. Some of them I think are a little more objective. One of the objective things, there are many abrupt cuts in this film where it just abruptly cuts to a new scene, not smoothly at all. And I think it's made more noticeable. A lot of those abrupt cuts, there's like this, orchestral motif going on, and then it just hard cuts and the music just cuts off.
Oh, it's yeah, for sure.
I think your mic is off.
Yeah, for sure. On the mic being muted, but also on the poor like music transitions.
Yeah, it's almost as if like they like aligned the music to an earlier cut, and then they like just chopped it all at once or something, or I don't know what they were doing.
We'll fix it in post.
And they're just like, oh, this is the new scene now. Like, there isn't even like a crossfade or fade to black, nothing. It's just a hard cut. Very, very jarring. That was surprising. It felt a little unprofessional for what I would have expected, but I mean, the original film didn't do any of that crap. Like, it looks great. So that was weird. This is an opinion piece. I continue to think that the close-ups of his head kind of ruin the suitmation mirage, or like effect. Like, it's believable at full scale. Once you get in the close-ups, especially those eyes, man, it's like those are plastic eyes.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we can tell that, it looks like you ever like had like a Tickle Me Elmo, or like a Sesame Street puppet or something, had those like big old plastic eyes in like the 90s or something. Like, it's kind of what the eyes look like to me, to be honest. They look like they're made of plastic, because they are. They did have some moments where they had like the eyes move a little bit, but they're still just the head itself close up, it looks a little cheesy. whatever. Maybe just like, me
Well,
looking at it with 2024 eyes.
sure. Well, no,
But,
I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Even for the 80s, it was still kind of...
Yeah. And then the biggest piece of that is like, not like the eyes looking silly to me, but also, I don't know if this is just like an art direction choice, but like those eyes, I looked up a word for this. Ready for learning a word, listeners? Exotropia is a fancy word that means the opposite of cross-eyed. So like the eyes face outwards.
Oh.
If you look at it.
Yeah.
And, there's real people in the world who like suffer from that, and, no one would make fun of them to their face. But there's also, I don't know, maybe an animation or like cartoons or other things. There's like some kind of idea that's drilled into your head that just makes it look like something that's silly. It just looks silly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like almost like farcical.
Sure. Yeah.
Like a farce. And, they're not intending to be a joke. So I'm not really sure why they
does
point
kind of
outwards.
It does kind of take you
ruins
out
the vibe.
of the... Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's exactly what I would say. Like, I'm like, whoa, this looks awesome. Look at this fog. And then they cut to a close. I'm like, okay, you lost me. Back to the white shot, please. Maybe some destruction. Those are my main things. I will say at the beginning of like the Tokyo destruction, I don't know if it was the lighting or something, but like, or maybe the quality of the miniatures. Like the first 10-15 minutes, it very much looks like a miniature set.
Yeah, like stands out as a miniature
it stands,
set.
And then later, the scaling looks right again. And I'm not sure what that is. I know when you're shooting miniatures, there's some kind of like math about the scale of the miniatures to like what lens you're using that helps sell it. I don't know. My filmmaker friends would make fun of me for not knowing the right term, and they would be able to explain it better than me.
Somebody write us an email.
Yeah, but there's some about it where it kind of breaks like the magic of believing that it's like a city, and like the first film never suffered from this. Like,
I wonder if the black and white helps.
Maybe, but I think like those, maybe it's the quality of the miniatures. Like a lot of the in the beginning of the destruction, like it looks like a bunch of plastic cars in a row, and a plastic, like a toy train. Almost looks like toys rather than like hand built miniatures. I'm not sure what they're using. But,
and it's even like that little 25-second clip. It's kind of the same thing where you can just tell it's miniatures. It doesn't even like the game. See, maybe it's the same thing. Like maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the just who knows.
It may also just be the fact that I know it's miniatures, but I can still I could still suspend my disbelief if like it looks real. I can appreciate that it looks real, even if I know it's miniatures.
But if you are in the middle of suspended disbelief and then it is so blatantly obvious that it's miniatures, there's nothing you can do to not be taken out of that. So
sure, but there's like even in the midst of that, they're intercutting some great close-up shots of him just like stomping things to the ground, and it's just sick. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So
did you happen to see in your little trivia hunt that they built an actual like 16-foot tall Godzilla foot for some of the close-up stuff? Yeah.
I did pull up the trivia, but I hadn't read through all of it yet.
It cost a whole $425 to build,
which seems like
in 1984 money. Let's see what that would be today.
I was just gonna Google that.
Here it is. Today, that would be... Caleb will cut all that out. Here it is. That would be $1,211. So, yeah, $1,200 for a 16-foot tall Godzilla foot for the close-ups.
That's cool.
Sometimes they let me do the wide shots. Shout out Scott Pilgrim versus the World and whoever the dude is that plays Captain America. That's him. Sometimes they let me do the wide shots.
I mean, skateboards down an entire chick.
Yeah. Wow.
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 You know what? This is such a tangent. Best scene in that movie? When she shows up at the house and his roommate, what's his name, Wallace or something, is like, oh, he just left. And he dives out the window. It's my favorite gif of all time.
Oh, Scott closes the door slightly. He just left. Crash.
So good.
Anyways, oh man, I love that movie.
All my
have you
thoughts
seen?
on
Have you seen the Netflix series?
I haven't yet. No.
I want to see it so bad. I haven't either.
My brother said it's pretty good. So
sick. I don't have Netflix right now, and so they lost my money. They need to earn it back with more than just Scott Pilgrim title.
This has been Anti-Capitalist Talk with Caleb. So what's next? Do we like? Should we get into trivia?
Told me not to talk about that. You told me not to talk about that. I'm not talking about it. Abrupt topic change and go.
Should we get into trivia? What should we?
Yeah. Let's get into trivia and wrap this sucker up.
Yeah. Let's see. What are some things that stood out to me? They did have to make Godzilla taller in this movie than previously.
From 50 meters to 80 meters.
Yeah. So
for you Americans, that's 160 feet to 260 feet.
It's higher.
American.
It's the way that I read it. That's primarily because, in the original film, there weren't that many tall buildings. Also, a lot of them had been reduced to rubble from bombings and such in World War II. And so, mid-'80s, there are a lot taller buildings, and so it kind of ruins the effect when Godzilla isn't taller than most of the buildings. So they did have to make him taller just to kind of sell it a little bit better. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
That did mean, too, that they had to redo all of their miniatures to a different scale. And I was just reading that that changed they bumped the budget of the film up to $6.25 million. So let's see.
What would that be in U.S. dollar? You don't know.
$6,250,000. Nope. One set too many zeros. In January 1981, we'll do 3. That's $20.3 million.
Not too shabby. Well.
So, $20 million. Had to redo all of their miniatures.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Maybe that explains some of my criticisms earlier. Maybe that's when the quality went down. No, I don't know.
Or it just was that they hadn't figured out the fact that, they're at a different scale now. They're at 1/40th scale.
Maybe it changed partway through the shooting. Who knows?
Could be.
Because it did seem like later in the Rampage, it like all of a sudden looked correct. Like it looked right to me. After maybe like the first 15 minutes maybe. Yeah. I bookmarked this one. So this is the first Heisei, am I saying that right? Series?
Yeah, Heisei. Yep.
Godzilla films. I was going to mention this earlier because you were talking about the whole timeline of things, but it's technically the last Showa film because it was produced and released during that Showa period, which ended in 1989, believe it or not. But it was retroactively added to the Heisei series because of continuity with the films after it.
Interesting.
So if you think about it, it was technically made during the Showa era. It's just that it happened to kick off a new kind of series of continuity, so they call that the Heisei era. So
sure, yeah.
So I guess Godzilla versus Biollante. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, Biollante. Yep.
that one was technically the first film produced during the Heisei era, Emperor-wise.
Huh. That's cool.
So, yeah. Thought that was a little interesting. Figured that'd be relevant. Yeah, it was also the special effects guys' last Godzilla film. So,
Oh,
I would
Nakano?
imagine. Yes. So I don't know if he worked on the original film, but he obviously worked on a bunch of them up until and including this film. So, yeah.
Let's see. He worked on... Did not work on the original. He worked on King Kong versus Godzilla, Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Ibira, Horror of the Deep, Destroy All Monsters Attack, Godzilla versus Hedorah versus Gigan versus Megalon versus Mechagodzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla, and his last Godzilla film was 1984, The Return of Godzilla. And then the last two films that he did, period, were Tokyo Blackout and Princess from the Moon in 1987. So much
Gotcha.
trivia. So much trivia. I love Wikipedia. No, I'm not giving you money. I love Wikipedia. No, I'm not giving you money.
I also saw the creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, was one of the extras running from Godzilla. Just a funny little...
Really? Oh, I love that.
Which I'm sure is the kind of thing that he would have talked about later in life, being
For
a
sure.
fan.
That's
I got to be an extra.
That's me.
So...
I love that.
Did you... you've seen the film many times, but when the... It's funny when the... Oh, and there's a comment also I wanted to make about this scene. When the Russians first came on scene in the sub, I was looking at these guys. I was like, those guys don't look Russian to me. I'm going to be honest with you. None of them look like they're from the same place in the world. It's like a real collection
Real ragtag crew
of white boys, if you will. It turns out they were Spanish, Australian, English, and American. And they brought in a Ukrainian Russian dialogue coach to help them learn their lines. I was like, these guys don't look Russian to me.
That's ridiculous. I love that.
But I did enjoy that sequence partially because there was like hard-coded Japanese subtitles for the Russian, but then there was like English subtitles like over it that were like the main English subtitles playing over the film.
Yeah.
And it was just funny to see the Japanese ones still present, like printed into the film, because it is a Japanese film, of course. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see that. It's not super often that I see a foreign film or a film for another country that has different languages represented and like subtitled in the original language, because of like the third language it starts to get confusing.
Yeah. Just the whole like when the Americans speak, it's in English and they just subtitle in Japanese. Like,
Right.
it's a trip to just be listening, because you're listening to the film in Japanese, right? And you're used to reading subtitles, and all of a sudden, like, your brain's like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Or it looks
English
like a
again,
moment
and
where
then
you're
just like back into.
Yep.
Am I hallucinating? Do I understand Japanese now?
Yeah. And you're
I think I'm turning Japanese.
you're hearing
I
them
think I'm turning
talking
Japanese. I think I'm turning
English
Japanese.
and
I really
Japanese
think
subtitles,
so.
and then English subtitles. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's too much. Oh my gosh. I did read the story. They started writing it like in 1977. They kept like rewriting it. And it took them a while to kind of finish it. A lot of details of that trivia, but that's kind of like the long and short of it. What else did I see? The Godzilla suit weighed 242 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
More than the original. That's insane.
Yeah, and the guy that that was in it was only able to last like 10 minutes at a time.
That's insane. Also, the guy. It was I think the guy in the suit I had read was sort of a last minute casting because the guy who was supposed to be in it like dropped out, and so he was a little too tall for it. So he was just freaking miserable in that thing.
Yeah,
it was like hard for him to get in and out. Really, a real trooper.
Jeez. Thank you for your service.
This was also, according to this, is the first one shot in 185:1. It's like a widescreen.
Oh, that's cool.
It's called VistaVision. So,
with a V, VistaVision.
Yeah, okay. VistaVision. So I think it's saying all of the Heisei films were shot in this aspect ratio. So
sweet.
Again, I haven't seen the ones before this film, but I'm wondering if they were all 4:3.
I would. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of the '70s ones are in 4:3. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about the budget a little bit being $65 million. They grossed $14 million, so which is about $39 million in modern. So they about doubled what it took to make it. Took about $20 million
said 40.
to make it. 14.
7 to 14.
It took $6.25 million to make, and then grossed $14 million.
There it is. Heard it correctly that time. That's pretty good.
That was... Wait. That was the global box office. It made 1.7 billion yen in Japan.
Very successful in Japan, then.
Very successful. 3.2 million tickets, earning 1.7 billion yen in rentals.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's most of the trivia. I'm sure there's more on the old Wikipedia. I thought the lava shots were kind of cool. Kind of curious how they accomplished that, but I hadn't looked into it. I also thought it was funny that they just kind of like lured him towards the I don't know, like the satellite dish kind of looking thing.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of like stepped wrong and fell. Like, was that what they were looking for? Or was that their plan, or it just kind of happened?
The idea was like lure him to the volcano in a way that like he would come up to it and the satellite dish would be across, and that's the sound that he was trying to get to, that like cicada-y like sound, right? And the idea was that because the only way to get over there would be across the volcano, and because lizard brain, he would have no choice but to just like walk forward. And then they needed him to get to a certain point, and then they blew those, all the mines or whatever they had down buried in there to get him to actually like fall. So yeah, they needed him to walk so far forward in order to then blow the edge of the volcano and get him to fall in. And when I was little, like probably the first three times I saw that movie, that made me cry. I was always, because when I was younger, I didn't pay attention to the story super close, and it was just always about Godzilla, and he was always the hero to me, no matter what the story was telling, even though he clearly wasn't. Like, and so it made me sad that they killed Godzilla. I don't know. I also cried at the end of Land Before Time. Every time I would watch that for a while.
There you go. Big feelings, all right?
Big feelings.
Leave the man alone.
It's my favorite Modest Mouse album.
I am actually looking at a little bit of trivia on Godzilla 1985 that I see on Wikipedia, which I haven't watched. Oh, maybe I will. But this is interesting. So, I guess New World Pictures were the distributor of Return of Godzilla in North America. They were originally, I don't know who, but they were thinking of rewriting the dialogue and turn the film into like a tongue-in-cheek comedy with Leslie Nielsen. Can you imagine if
like
that had
Mr.
happened?
Like Mr.
Turn it into
Magoo.
a big old joke. Like, What's Up, Tiger Lily is what they're referencing.
Oh my goodness.
But Raymond Bird didn't like the idea.
Was just like, no.
And thought they should take the nuclear metaphor seriously.
Fair.
So I guess props to him, even though...
Oh, Naked Gun. That's what I was trying to think of what he was in.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Oh, man.
for sure. Can you imagine? I would still want to see it.
Oh, yeah, me too. Oh, wow.
And what if that script exists? Again, also, I haven't watched it, but apparently there's a million product placements for Dr. Pepper that they inserted into Godzilla 1985.
Really? Man, I'm going to have to watch it now because I've seen that one also probably 5 times. That was one that I definitely rented from the movie store quite a bit. Oh,
yeah.
man.
Maybe I'll watch it. Just to kind of see the differences. I was just kind of taking a look. I did a quick scrub through the movie just to kind of see what was different. It's shorter. It's like 15 minutes shorter or so, maybe more. But there's like added scenes, American scenes. So I'm curious kind of what they cut out, but maybe I'll check it out.
All of his scenes were filmed in one day. All of Burr's scenes were filmed in one day to suit his schedule. He was paid $50,000, and the reverse shots of the actors he was speaking to were all filmed the next day. And the American filming was completed in 3 days.
Sounds a lot like what they did for the 1954, honestly.
One of the most controversial changes done in the film was having Soviet Colonel Kashirin deliberately launch the nuclear missile rather than die in attempting to prevent its launch.
Of course.
So instead of the Soviet dude just laying there and dying, the Americans were like, no, let's have him. He launches it intentionally.
Of course they did.
Oh, gosh.
So,
well...
1984, baby.
Yeah. What'd you give it on Letterboxd? I guess I was about to ask what you would. We need to come up with a rating system, but we have Letterboxd, and I've joined Letterboxd, by the way, and so
sweet.
I haven't figured it out. You find me. I could not find you. If you find me, I will add you back. I've started just blindly rating films. Sam was like, how do you haven't seen some of those in years. How do you know? And I'm just like, it's kind of, at this point it is, if I haven't seen it recently enough to know what my definite rating is, would I want to watch it again right now?
Gotcha.
And how high would I want it, where between. So anyways, what'd you rate it on Letterboxd?
Yeah. I give it like a 7 out of 10. It's 5 stars on Letterboxd, so it would be, was that 3.5 stars?
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Cool.
So basically between Godzilla 54 and Americanized 56, which I rated 4 out of 5 and 3 out of 5 respectively. So
okay.
Yeah.
So the original 54 you rated 4 out of 5, and then the Americanized was.
I think it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. 84 is, in terms of an origin story and a reboot, it's one of my favorites. And I really think the Heisei era was where they did the most right, and where Godzilla really earned its place as the kaiju of all kaiju, and like the monster of all monsters. So I'm excited to come back to this era.
Love it.
Yeah. So next film to go with chronological order would be the
98?
first ever American Godzilla film, Godzilla.
Yeah.
By TriStar Sony. Starring,
expectations are low.
Starring our sweet boy Matthew Broderick. And,
it does have a 5 point something on IMDb, which is pretty tough.
I need to
Which
look
makes
up.
me look forward to watching 2 more. Almost.
I have a feeling you, depending on what kind of movies you've seen, and I have a feeling you've seen a lot. The guy who is like the
I'm sure they.
he's French.
Jean Reno.
Jean Reno. Yeah.
Yeah, love that guy.
His role in that movie is really, really great. He's cool.
I'm sure he was underused.
Yeah, I mean, he's underused, but he does pretty great. I would say I don't know. I can see why this movie got so low ratings in America, but in terms of a Godzilla movie, without
It's
spoiling
decent.
anything, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll see. Mostly, I
Yeah.
don't know. It might be because I'm watching the trailer right now, and the girl that plays Matthew Broderick's girlfriend is really cute. But
half-star bum for that.
yeah, it would be a 2.5-star film if it weren't for her, and her New York accent.
That's funny.
That's
Yeah.
that's one of the best parts of the film is that it all takes place in Queens, and everybody's just like, "Are you kidding me with this thing?" Like everybody's just like annoyed about it ruining their day, like traffic because of this thing. Like it's pretty great.
I'm walking here.
Yeah, very much.
Man. This is a total aside, but is there only one King Kong versus Godzilla movie? Or is he show up in one of the other ones? Well, there's a legendary movie, obviously. I'm referring to before
Right.
that.
Yeah, before that, no, yeah, there's just Godzilla vs. King Kong, the one.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious. I'm a big fan of pretty much all the King Kong movies, so I'm curious to see how they pull that in 63.
Yeah,
So-
we'll get there.
The original is pretty classic. Pretty sure no one that I know has seen the 1970s King Kong movie. That one's super different. It's a totally different storyline. It's very interesting, actually. What's his name? The dude abides is the main character in that movie.
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges. Yeah, young Jeff Bridges, 1970 something, 76, I want to say.
Really
Yeah, check it out sometime. So
crazy.
yeah, especially if you're familiar with like the 33 King Kong or the 2005, which are basically the same story because 2005 is a remake. The 70 was it 74, 76 is just like a
Just like a
totally different
one-off,
storyline.
like-
It's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
76, that's right. So yeah.
Sick. Well, anything else, or is that it?
I think that's pretty much a wrap. I can't think of anything else that really needs to be said about 84. It is what it is. Oh, the giant bug was cool. The sequence at the beginning, that was pretty cool. It was like kind of flying around a little bit. That aspect was hokey, but they built like this giant sea lice something or other.
Oh yeah, it was supposed to be like a skin lice or whatever from Godzilla.
Sea louse, they called it.
Sea louse. That's right. Yeah.
It's like this giant thing.
On the on the Yahadamaru.
Yeah, and they
at the beginning.
I had already forgotten they had some pretty nasty looking corpses on that ship too. They went all out with that.
Yeah,
that
they
stuff.
really did. That opening, that scene is really, really creepy.
I do think like the first 15 minutes of the film are stronger than the rest of the film, but
Yeah, they went they go
strong
real hard
open.
at the beginning, real hard at the end, and it's just like kind of in the middle.
for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, this is the one about Godzilla movies. Link is in the show notes to our Patreon if you want to support us. $5 a month gets you a basically unedited version of this. You get to hear me say that twice, and you don't get to see me pick my nose on the last episode because we don't have a bonus one for that. But going forward from here, there is members only versions of the show on our Patreon. Like the button. I'm going to tell you to smash it because this is a Godzilla show.
All right, that's fair.
Anything to say here as we head out, Brian?
I'm gonna start picking my nose on films so that the Patreons have something to pay for.
Riveting. Just like last time. Absolutely riveting. Thanks for being here, everybody. This is the one about Godzilla movies. Bye.